Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. From record drought to now record rain, and some of the problems that could be associated with all that moisture. We begin today talking about mosquitoes. Here's SUNUP's Dave Deacon and our Extension livestock entomologist, Justin Talley.
With all this recent rain, you may have noticed that there's little parasites floating around Oklahoma. And Justin, let's talk about mosquitoes.
Yeah, so with the water we've received, we've got quite a few mosquitoes out, and two types of mosquitoes are out: the floodwater mosquitoes and the container breeding mosquitoes. The ones that I would be mainly concerned about at this time are the floodwater mosquitoes that are breeding at this time of year, and with the recent amount of rainfall, could become a significant problem if the temperatures start increasing significantly.
Now, the floodwater mosquitoes, that's like what we have back here. This would be their habitat, just, dank water.
Yes, that's correct, Dave. Any standing water that's still and is not moving a lot can harbor floodwater breeding mosquitoes. Basically, what happens is that they'll lay their eggs in areas that can contain water, even when there's no water present, and they're pretty resilient and can and survive when it's really dry. And then when the rains come, they'll hatch out. Is there anything that we can do about getting rid of the mosquitoes? So the main thing is to reduce the amount of water if you can. Now, in certain areas, it's just not feasible. I understand that. But if you can, reduce the water in any kind of container, or if it's an area that you can drain yourself in your backyard, or make it where the water drains out, that's the number one thing. The other thing is you can use what we call these mosquito dunks. In more proper terms, they're called larvicides. And if you use these larvicides, they're very safe to use. They're either bacterial in nature, so bacillus type products, or they're what we call insect growth regulators. And these insect growth regulators are very safe, but you do have to follow the label when you apply them.
In the event that it stops raining and all this water is gone, will we still have to worry about mosquitoes after this?
Yes, you will. So basically, there's different types of mosquitoes, and depending on the type of breeding habitats there are. We have a lot of water right now, so we have a lot of floodwater mosquitoes. Well, when the waters do dry out, we can have a lot of these container breeding mosquitoes, or these more what we call transient water mosquitoes. And those tend to peak later in the summer, and those are ones that are more involved in the transmission of the West Nile virus, more so than those that are breeding in the water right now.
So when we're out on an evening and it's dusk, is there a good way to keep the mosquitoes off of you?
So there's various repellents out there that you can use. The one that's been proven effective for a long time now are those that contain DEET. Now, most formulations of DEET, if you want good adequate control, you want anywhere from 10% to 15%. Those that require anything more, you've got to be careful where you put it, especially on children. You don't want to put it on a child that's less than 2 months of age, and you don't want to put it on their hands. But DEET is a very good repellent, and it has been proven to be very efficacious in repelling multiple species of mosquitoes. The other things there's an approved repellent from the CDC called picaridin. And the picaridin repellent is safe as well, and you can put that one on children as well as DEET. But the thing you have to consider with any of these repellents is you want to be careful, not put too much. And then the other thing is to wear long sleeve clothing in evening times when you have a lot of mosquito repellent.
And thank you very much, Justin. And you have a newsletter that kind of covers all this information.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and for a link to that, you can find it on our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
with all the rain, there's a good chance you'll see more foot rot in cattle this year. For more, here's our Extension beef cattle specialist, Dave Lallman.
Foot rot is a bacterial infection of the foot area. Generally causes infection and inflammation in the interdigital skin. And it takes some sort of either a thinning or a break or scratch in that interdigital, meaning between the toes, skin area, to allow the bacteria to enter the foot. Foot rot infections are very painful to cattle, and primarily because it causes serious swelling between the toes. And eventually that swelling will create a break in the interdigital skin, and you'll see some necrotic fluid that doesn't smell very good being secreted from that area. To reduce the incidence of foot rot, of course, managing the environment is important, and managing the nutritional program is important. From an environmental standpoint, it's really pretty simple, and that is to do what you can to keep the cattle out of mud, wet conditions, so that the interdigital skin isn't stressed and kind of over time becomes thin, soft, and so it's more susceptible to any kind of injury. And then secondly, anything that's sharp, pointy, anything that could scratch or puncture the hoof, particularly that interdigital skin area between the toes, you want to try to minimize. Your veterinarian will have to help you with treatment in terms of antimicrobial treatment. It's very obvious in the literature that the earlier the animals are treated, once the lameness is noticed and it's diagnosed as foot rot, the better they recover, the faster they recover. And so that's important. And then work with your veterinarian to figure out what antimicrobial treatment is most appropriate in your area. And also for animals that don't respond quickly, your veterinarian needs to be involved in the decision making there, because that infection can spread into the deeper tissues of the foot area and cause long-term lameness. So there is a clearance for chlorotetracycline to be fed in mineral primarily for anaplasmosis control. It's labeled to feed to cattle at the rate of 0.5 milligram per pound of body weight. So 350 milligrams per a 700-pound steer, or 500 milligrams for a 1,000-pound cow. And that's been shown to be helpful, as well as improve performance during the summer of cattle as well. But again, a discussion with your veterinarian would be the best approach to determine the best way to minimize the risk and to control or to treat cases of foot rot.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. Flooding is dangerous and tricky. Flooding is dangerous because it is so easy to misjudge the risk. Water can be a mighty force, eroding banks, floating away cars and houses, gutting roadways. Water moves faster and is deeper than it looks. Flooding is tricky because rain can fall far away, then converge to raise the water level near you, and that can happen at a surprisingly fast pace. Here is a flood map from Wednesday afternoon, May 27th, from the National Weather Service's water.weather.gov website. There were 98 reporting stream gauges in Oklahoma. 8 stream gauges indicated major flooding, the bright purple symbols. The 8 red symbols represented moderate flooding. Minor flooding was reported at 14 stream gauges, the orange symbols. The swollen Washita River in this picture was 5 feet below minor flood stage. The water filling the Washita River collected over several days from heavy rains in Grady County, but also from heavy rains upstream in Caddo, Custer, and Washita counties. Stream flow monitors and forecasts are one way to stay on top of the flood situation. And when you come across water over a roadway, remember what the National Weather Service says. Turn around, don't drown. Here's Gary with an update on our vanishing drought status.
Thanks, Alan. Good morning, everybody, and I come bearing great news. The drought, for all intents and purposes, is over for the state of Oklahoma. Let's take a look at that latest U.S. Drought Monitor map. Other than a small area of moderate drought across the far western panhandle and some abnormally dry conditions up in the northwest, the state is drought-free. We have gone from 52% of the state in at least severe drought, that's that D2 drought, about a month ago, to basically none now, and hopefully for some time to come. Now this all comes thanks to the wettest month on record in state history, with a statewide average of 13.04 inches through Wednesday afternoon. That's 8.88 inches above normal. The previous wettest month on record was October 1941, with about 10.75 inches. Now a large area of the state had from about 15 inches to more than 25 inches during the month, with more possibly yet to come. If we look at the departure from normal rainfall map from the Mesonet, at least through the 27th, we can see much of southern Oklahoma had 9 to more than 12 inches above normal for the month so far. So that's your rainy month in a nutshell right there. Well, we wanted drought relief. We wanted the drought to be gone. We could have probably used it a little bit slower pace, but the end result is the drought is gone, and now we have a summer to look forward to with lots of growth, hopefully, and hopefully not a return to drought anytime soon. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Your planter may be getting larger and you may want to be going faster, and we have Randy Taylor here to kind of talk about that. Randy, back in the day, a 30-foot planter, that was the norm. Things are getting bigger and faster.
Well, certainly a lot of our equipment is. Some of our farms are getting bigger,
right.
And but it's certainly the equipment is. And the ag industry, as far as planters, the equipment industry, they want to go fast. That's the trend, to be able to cover more acres.
Right.
The farmers are interested in capacity, so everyone's working towards this 10-mile-an-hour planter, and so there's a lot of things that factor into being able to do that. And matter of fact, you've got a couple companies right now that have stuff available that's their target is to be able to plant corn at 10 miles an hour and still have really good spacing.
Well, and you can want that to happen, but what's the actual result that you've been finding in your research?
Well, certainly, we've been planting corn pretty fast for a lot of years,
right.
with older equipment, and as you go faster, your variability in your plant spacing increases, and I don't think anyone would dispute that. But now we've got better delivery systems where we're not dropping the seed through a tube,
right.
And so with those systems now, we're carrying that seed almost all the way to the trench, and so we're with the intention that we can go faster, have less bounce, and get better spacing as we're going through the field faster. So that's just some new technology that's there, as well as some add-on technology that you can buy and convey that seed down a little lower, as opposed to dropping it and getting better spacing.
And you actually have some corn in the ground right now that you're doing some research on.
Yes, we've planted some earlier this year at 12 miles an hour, and which is pretty fast if you've planted a lot of corn. And so with that, we're getting pretty good spacing. We run it with our conventional planter that we've done a lot of research with over time, and we saw out of our planter exactly what we would expect, that as we go faster, our spacing uniformity decreases. We become less uniform down the road with our corn plants. With the new planter we're looking at, not so much. It actually did pretty good at high speeds, which is what it was designed to do.
Okay, thank you much, Randy. And we'll actually catch up with you later in the year as you prepare to harvest that, and we'll see how everything worked out.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, thank you much.
You bet.
Joining us now is Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist. And Kim, this time of year, of course, the countdown to harvest. Let's talk about quality and what you're hearing.
Well, I'm hearing right now that there may be some problems with the quality. You go back several months, we had the drought, we had a short crop coming on, then we got the cool weather and the rain. That crop maybe went from, for Oklahoma, 85 million up to 120, and then the rain and the cool weather continued. Talking to elevator managers, especially in southern Oklahoma, they say there will probably be some sprout damage, but right now they think it's going to be limited. The protein will be another question. One estimate I heard recently was 11.5%. So right now it looks, if we can get some dry conditions,
that the quality will come in at least acceptable. And remember, last year's crop was about 14 average protein, so we can blend out some protein and make this crop just right for milling quality.
And then of course the big question with all this rain, when will harvest start?
Well, as soon as it gets dry, it's going to start. You know, we had the rains come across on Friday, then we should have about 7 days of, it's 20% rain, so maybe the high places will get dry enough, but as soon as it gets dry enough to get them in there, it's going to be moving in southern Oklahoma, and we're going to start getting some wheat in the bin.
Last week we talked about that price rally. What's happened since then?
Oh, it went away. It's incredible. You know, we got that 60-cent rally. I was talking about the July contract breaking $5.60 and maybe running on up. But again, we talked about it was the funds buying that drove that up. This week, 4 days, we took 55 cents off that price. We popped back down through that 520 support. We're now below that. And, you know, the market giveth and the market taketh away. And right now, just like the weather, it's relatively volatile.
And then in terms of considering all that, what's the market offering?
Well, if you look at the basis across the state, it's probably from about a -45 in southern Oklahoma to a -10 near Enid area. If you go out to the Panhandle, it's a -35, all subtracted, of course, from that Kansas City July contract price. With that July contract around 510, you're looking at prices from $4.65 to somewhere around $5 near Enid.
And then what overall are you watching price-wise?
Well, price-wise, I think right now we could just watch that July contract. I remember I mentioned that we had a resistance at 520. If we can pop that 520, maybe we can challenge that 560 again. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. If we stay below 520, we may go down and test 485 on that contract. If we break 485, then we could challenge 450. But I'm watching that July contract price.
Okay, Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, thanks a lot, and hopefully next week we can talk about those combines rolling.
You got it.
Over the last several years, of course, we've had several years of dry weather, and now we finally have a spring where we can grow lots of the cool season grasses to put up in hay. But as luck would have it, the spring rains keep coming at a frequent enough rate that it's hard to get the hay put up at a correct moisture content. If we put hay up that's got a little too much moisture in it in that bale, then some reactions take place that cause an increase in the internal temperature of that bale. Once we have enough extra moisture in there that the microbes that are going in with that hay, and every hay has them, that the microbial activity takes over and the increase in the internal temperature of that bale will change pretty rapidly. And once it gets to about 150 degrees, then very rapidly that microbial activity jumps it up to 170, more chemical reactions take place, and pretty soon that bale may be as high as 400 degrees internally. That means that it's hot enough to catch on fire and to burn and cause some real problems. As we're working with the hay this spring, I think we want to keep in mind that if we're suspect at all about the moisture content of the hay as we're putting it up, first of all, we probably want to store that hay away from buildings and away from other hay crops that we store. Also, we can do some testing of that hay as to the internal temperature. If you'll go to the SUNUP website, that's sunup.okstate.edu, there's a link there to an excellent e-extension fact sheet. It's actually written in Pennsylvania by the folks at Penn State University. And they will give you directions as to how to measure the internal temperature of these big round bales. If the hay that you put up is a little damp, but it doesn't get hot enough to cause the burning problems that we're concerned about, I still would suggest that before you feed it next winter, that you do a regular hay test. Check the protein and energy content of the hay, because you see that hay that got real warm inside denature the protein that would be available for the cow to use, and what you end up with is a product that the cattle like to eat but has very little nutritious value in it. We hope this helps you this spring as you're putting up that wet hay And we certainly look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
I don't know if you heard, but Oklahoma has had a lot of rain over the last week and a half or so. And Daryl, how's that affecting the cattle?
Well, you know, the rain in general is good for forage production. You know, we've made a lot of progress in wiping out the drought finally. So that's mostly good. Obviously, we've had so much rain and some flooding in some cases. That's sometimes a challenge for cattle to stay out of that. I haven't heard of any real losses from cattle actually being washed away or anything, but there's probably been some problems with that. Probably the bigger challenge with respect to the amount of rain we've had recently is on hay production. In some cases, stored hay has been overcome with floodwaters and will be damaged in terms of quality, or in some cases washed away. And obviously new hay production is very difficult in this kind of weather. The ground is saturated, and so it's very difficult to put up quality hay until we do get a chance actually to dry down a little bit from all the rain we've had.
Let's talk about something we don't usually talk about, the poultry industry. And there's some talk about the avian flu going around right now. Is that going to affect the meat markets?
Well, you know, a lot of folks are watching that. There's been, USDA recently reported about 41 million birds have either died of the disease or have been depopulated as a result of trying to control the disease. That sounds like an awful lot. It's actually not when you think about how many birds are slaughtered. Most of those birds that have been depopulated are laying hens, so the impact has been pretty dramatic in the egg markets. On the meat market side, first of all, we haven't depopulated and won't depopulate under the really worst of circumstances enough to materially affect supply of broilers. What it has done, in fact, though, is closed export markets. Mm-hmm. So the impact of avian influenza on meat markets is actually a bit counterintuitive in that it's actually increasing domestic supplies. We can't export, and so it's actually putting more poultry meat on the meat markets in the short run here, and so that's actually adding to that situation.
We just passed Memorial Day, and people are going to be getting out grilling. What are the beef prices looking like for them?
Well, USDA released the latest retail meat prices recently, and you know, beef prices continue to push higher. Choice beef was at a record level. The all fresh meat or beef price, excuse me, was a little bit down, less than a penny a pound, and that's because we've got a wider than usual choice select spread right now. Pork prices dropped pretty dramatically because we do have a large increase in pork production this year. Poultry prices were slightly up from a year ago. What's interesting in all of this is that beef prices have remained very strong despite the fact that pork and poultry are relatively cheaper. The ratio of retail beef prices to pork and poultry are at record levels. There's a lot of folks concerned that that can't persist, but in fact, with the limited supply of beef we have, it looks like that will persist for a while, and beef demand for the quantity that's available appears to continue to be very, very strong.
And what does that mean for the cattle producers of Oklahoma?
Well, what it does is help support the sort of the supply implications here of higher cattle prices. Obviously, those do get passed on to consumers, and that's what's happening with these strong retail prices. So it's sort of the market working as it really needs to until such time as we can increase beef production, and that's quite a few months away from us yet.
Okay, thank you much. Daryl Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Many ponds around the state have refilled thanks to the abundant spring rains this year. That's cause to celebrate, but at the same time, there are a few things you should be doing and looking for to make sure that you don't have a new set of problems developing in your recently refilled pond. The first place I would look would be your pond spillway. Be very vigilant in watching for any signs of erosion beginning in that soil. If you see erosion, do not hesitate to ask for advice from your Natural Resource Conservation Service on how to prevent it from getting worse, because if you ignore it, it can become quite a significant problem after a few more overflows. Second thing to be aware of is that fish have been moving around in all of this heavy overland flow that we've been having in some places. Most species of fish are able to move pretty well across the surface of the land if there's enough water flowing. So if you had undesirable fish in any ponds above you, you probably have those fish in your pond now. And there are a few especially obnoxious species like the common carp that are notorious for swimming upstream over your spillway. So do keep a check on what may have arrived in your pond in the way of unwelcome fish species visitors, and seek further guidance if you have that problem. The third thing that's a possibility for pond owners with recently refilled ponds would be excess growth of algae in your pond. The reason for this is a abundance of nutrients that have probably been released from the pond bottom from the decomposition of organic matter that occurred when the pond was dry, or at least those areas of the pond bottom were dry. So it's not unexpected that we may have a lot of excessive growth of algae over the next few years, and you can try some herbicides such as copper sulfate products in the short term, but I would counsel that these are very limited in their duration. The algae is going to tend to just grow back in a hurry. Really what's required is patience in order to have the reestablishment of beneficial submerged aquatic plants that will compete for light and nutrients against the algae.
That'll do it for us this week. I'm Lyndall Stout, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.